I have got lots of ways of cutting mortises in my workshop. I've got a hollow chisel mortiser, got a couple of dominoes, but sometimes the easiest way to do something is with a little tiny router like this. I've got a job coming up where I've got to cut some dovetail mortises in here, and there are a number of operations to do that. So I'm going to use my little router to cut the majority of the waste away before I finish the job with a dovetail cutter. When you're mortising, you really need two fences. Okay, you can hold it hard against one side and just make do with the one fence that comes with the router, but it's better if you've got two, and that way it can't slide either way. So I've made a pair of mortising fences like this, and they're just made out of cherry from the scrap box, and they consist, let's take that off, consist of two pieces. The bottom piece has got a pair of V-grooves in it, which correspond with the two fence rods, and there's an embedded knot in there as well. And there's a couple of clearance holes which take two locating dowels, so they go in there like that, and then a Bristol lever to hold the two together. And they just clamp onto my fence rods like that. And then the jig will sit on my workpiece like that, so the base of the router is on the job. Clamp those up, and I can just route backwards and forwards to create my mortise. Shall we have a go at making it? I think we should. Welcome to Workshop Essentials. There are a few drilling operations in this project.
Not quite.
First, a shallow 10mm hole for an embedded nut, and then right through at 6.5mm to give me a bit of clearance for an M6 Bristol lever. Then some 8mm holes for alignment pins. The pins are snug in the top piece and they're glued in, but I eased out the holes in the lower piece to make them easy to use. I mitered the top outside corners to show which end is front, and the chamfer gives a nice finish to the top edges. Now, in an ideal world, I would like my fences to stick out the front and out of the back by exactly the same amount. That way, if I'm cutting an offset mortise, I can simply turn the router around to get the mirror image. But these fence rods are not themselves symmetrical about the centre line of the base. So I can't go by where the fence rods are from each end. So I've lined up the centre of my fence with the centre mark on the casting here. So that's dead centre. And I've got it clamped in place against my fence rods, like that. And I can see now where they're touching. Just mark it there, and there. That's where the centres of my V-grooves have got to be. Now, I've got a choice of making my V-grooves. I can either do it on the router table with a V-cutter, and that's easy to set the centre because the V-cutter's got a point on it. Or I can do it on the router table with a dado stack tilted over. Now that's more difficult to set up but gives me a cleaner cut. When you're cross-cutting with a V-cutter, it's very easy for it to slip sideways. Everything's got to be clamped up absolutely rock solid because one edge of the cutter is cutting conventionally and the other is climbing, and so the forces tend to drag it away. So I've got to make a decision. Am I going to bother to set my dado stack up just for 2 little cuts, or 4 little cuts, or do it with an easier setup on the router table. Let's see what to decide, eh? The router table won out. I'm cutting both top and bottom pieces at the same time, making life easier for myself by using double-sided tape to keep them together. Oh, nice. Excellent. Right, well, we can assemble this now. So remember, the chamfered bits indicate the front, so they go in there like that and like that. And then the top pieces with the alignment pins and the Bristol lever go in there like that. Now, if we left it just like this, then there is a limit to how narrow a workpiece you could do. I wouldn't be able to mortise anything narrower than a gate post like that. So we have to put in a couple of plates underneath so that we can do narrower workpieces, sensible sized workpieces if you like. And I've got a hole in them because I don't like embedding steel into something unless it's required for the operation, just in case you have to get it out at some point. So I've got some nice big access holes where the nuts are. So these are just going to get glued underneath, and then we're ready to rock and roll. So when it's all trimmed up and assembled, it looks like this. So they go on there like that. And you must make sure that when both fences touch, when they're closed up like that, that there is no gap down there. If one end touches before the other, there'll be a potential for a little bit of movement, and you'll end up with an oversized mortise at best and a wonky one at worst. So if that's the case, you'll just need to fettle those a bit so that they kiss beautifully all the way down. Now, with these fence rods, they're not massively long, but I can still get enough capacity to mortise a piece of wood such as this. This is X inch and a half, I think. So that could go in my vise like that. That sits on there like that, and these get adjusted like that, and I can just mortise slide backwards and forwards. If you want to go bigger than that, then you'd need longer fence rods. And you might also need longer fence rods if you upgrade this a bit. You can just leave it like this. And for what I'm building this for, this is perfectly adequate. But if this is going to become your sort of main fence system, you might want to consider fitting a fine adjuster. And we'll just take those off for a minute. Now, when I first got this router, it did not come with any lateral fine adjustments. And I think people went up in arms because it's an expensive router. You know, a top-of-the-range small router and no fine adjustment, really? So Festool did actually change the design. If you buy one now, there's a fine adjuster in the fence rods, I believe. But this is the fence that came with the router originally. It's a very simple, well made, but very simple design. A couple of clamps, they fit onto your fence. Very simple design, just fit onto the fence like that and clamp in place. But as I say, there's no fine adjustment. What happens if you want to move it over by just 0.5 millimetre? And that's very difficult this way. So I made a fine adjuster. It's simply a block of wood, 2 embedded nuts that are then capped over so that you can't see them, and a couple of knobs. And the Bristol lever has got 2 Nylox nuts on, so they won't vibrate loose because of the Nylocking bit. So that just goes round and round and round and round like that. And that fits onto the original fence like this, because there happens to be a 6 millimetre hole, an M6 tapped hole in the fitting. So that goes in there like that. And I can set the fence approximately right by eye. Let's move that fence rod up a bit. Get it approximately right by eye. Clamp up the fine adjuster. And then, when the fence is unlocked and everything else is locked up, I can move the fence very precisely. One turn is 1mm. And then tighten it up. And if you wanted, you could fit exactly this mechanism to this fence here. You just need an embedded nut in here, and just make sure that you arrange it so that this Bristol lever and this Bristol lever don't foul each other. They've got to bypass each other. So there you go. There's a couple of ideas to improve the fence arrangement on your router. I hope you find it useful, and certainly this fine adjustment mechanism can be used in all kinds of jigs. Actually, I use this kind of thing quite a lot. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to all that stuff, and join me next time when I'll be using this in anger. So until then, enjoy your workshop. Cheerio.